Cyberpunk Goggles. I'm going to show you how I made them right here on the Evil Ted channel. Welcome back, my fellow makers. This video is sponsored by Dap Weldwood Contact Cement. I know what you're thinking. Hey Ted, aren't you normally a Barge guy? Well, when I worked in the industry, Barge was kind of a standard and I didn't have to pay for it. People went out and got it for me. Now that I work for myself, there's two things I've discovered about Barge. One, it's expensive, and two, it's hard to find. So I was in a pinch, needed some contact cement, and I got Dap Weldwood contact cement. I started working with it, and I have to say, it works just as well. Also, when it dries, it's non-toxic, it remains flexible, water resistant, heat resistant. That's pretty awesome. So that's what we're going to be using today. So guys, go ahead, download those patterns, and let's get started. All the patterns have been spray mounted onto poster board and cut out. I prefer to do this, which makes it easier to transfer them onto foam. To cut out the rivet details under the pattern, I use a paper hole punch. We're going to start with part 1 and part 2, and we're going to trace them onto 6mm foam using a ballpoint pen, using my 123 block to hold the pattern down. Be sure to take pattern 2 and flip it over for the right side. Now we're going to trace part 3 and part 4 onto 3mm foam. And take part 4, of course, and flip it over for the right side. Now with our 2mm foam, we're going to trace out part 5 and part 6 twice. Now everything is traced, we're going to cut them out using a utility knife and a craft knife. Now we're going to proceed to cut all the parts out at a 90-degree angle. For cutting out the curved areas, I like using the craft knife. When cutting out circles, I like to have a starting mark. All the parts are cut out, and with the sanding drum, I'm going to round off the edges of part 1. Now we're going to switch over to the stone bit. This is going to help smooth out the edges. Also, with the stone bit, it really helps clean up the uneven edges. Now to cut out the circle detail on part 3, you can use a craft knife or you can use a piece of brass tube the same diameter. Now the gluing begins. We start with part 2, the left and the right, and let's glue them together with some Dap contact cement. Speed up the drying a little faster with a hairdryer. Now we glue part 1 and part 2 together. Apply contact cement to the edge part 2 and then apply the glue to the back side of part 1. Speed up with the hairdryer. Then line up part 1 to part 2 on the center mark. Make contact. And make sure you follow the edge. Make it flush. And curve around the edges. Now moving to part 5 and part 6 are 2mm parts. Applying contact cement to the bottom edge of part 6. Applying contact cement to the edge of part 5. The contact cement is dry. We start with the registration mark and then follow the outside edge, making sure we have contact. Make sure to leave equal space for the viewing port. Now we're going to glue the eye sockets in the back of the goggles. Apply contact cement on the top edge of the eye sockets and now on the back side of the goggles. When placing the eye sockets inside, make sure the eye hole is facing on the inside. Use the eye hole registration mark to line up on the center of the outside edge. Placing it slightly underneath. It doesn't have to be a perfect fit, but as long as it sits just behind the hole. Let's glue on the 3mm detail. Apply contact cement to part 3 and part 4, left and right. Using the pattern, make some trace out lines for the glue on part 1. This helps apply glue directly where it needs to go. Now with the stone bit, this is going to help clean up the lines and make them nice and flush. With the wood burner, we're going to add some rivet details. Now we're going to change the tip to our wood burner and add square detail. Now we're going to heat seal the foam with the heat gun. Now to guarantee a smooth finish, we're going to brush on some prime finish. Now the primer is dry, we're going to glue on a foam tab. This is going to have something to clamp onto while we spray Plasti-dip in the spray booth. While the plastic dip is drying, we're going to take our Cybertech molds and pour in some clear casting resin. We're going to cast these up. These are going to be the eyes for our goggles. Now the plastic dip is dry. Before we start painting, I want to mask off the eye sockets using frog tape. I'm going to use my circle template. Cut them out with a craft knife. And gently place them into the goggles. Now let's put on the clamp and take it to the spray booth. We're going to put down a silver base coat. The silver coat is dry. We're going to do the chipped paint technique. We're going to mask up the edges of the corners using rubber latex before we apply our red coat. While the paint dries, we can move over to the cast parts. Take them out of the molds. Look them over. Yeah, these look great. Now we're going to get some frog tape. Now with our craft knife, we're going to cut out some small circles, masking the center of our lenses. We're going to use some 80 grit sandpaper to help flatten out the lenses. Now that they're sanded, we're going to use some double stick tape and get them ready for paint. Take them to the spray booth, and now we're going to put down some flat black coat I'll let that dry and then put on some silver coat. While those dry, let's move on to the goggles. Now the red paint is completely dry. We're going to gently peel off the rubber latex, revealing the silver paint underneath to create that chip paint look. Now remove the masking from the sockets. The paint is dry on our cast parts. So remove the masking from them. I use clear casting resin so I can put lights behind them. Now using my center finder, I'm going to put an X on the center. I'm going to use a drill bit the same diameter as my LEDs. Now we have our two LEDs already wired up. Now with the Rotary Tool sanding drum, I'm going to grind off the lenses. This helps diffuse the LEDs. Then I'm going to add some flux and solder them together. Then I'm going to solder the wires into the battery holder. Now I like to put a battery to the LEDs to make sure they're working. Yeah, the lights are working, that's great. Now we're going to start the aging process with some watered down black acrylic. I blot the excess off with a paper towel. Now once the acrylic is completely dry, I'm going to use some denatured alcohol onto a paper towel and wipe off the excess. This technique works really well on Rust-Oleum 2X because the paint is enameled base, so you can wipe off the acrylic without the fear of damaging your red paint. Now with some chrome Tamiya paint, we take the wood burning details and paint them to make them look like screw heads. Now we're going to take our lenses and stick them down with some double stick tape. And with my airbrush and some flat black Tamiya paint, I'm going to go along the edges to create that aging effect. Now they're dry, we're going to glue them down with Dap's Rapid Fuse Glue. Now let's insert the lights. Put in the batteries. Now I'm going to secure the wires in with some hot glue. Now the lights and the wiring are secured, let's move on to the elastic strap. Now the hot glue is cooled off, let's put on some graphics. I'm going to use some cell phone graphics I have around the shop, but if you guys want to add additional details, you can definitely get some really nice model decals that are out there. I find using model decals is another way to add great graphics to your props. Now the graphics are done, I'm going to take some flat black Tamiya and help paint out the back of the lights. This will make it a lot easier to see through the goggles. Now you own your own pair of Cyberpunk goggles. Everything I used on this build is listed below the video. As a matter of fact, you guys can go to your nearest Michael store and pick up your Cosmolds and your Dap Weldwood contact cement. Also, they make it in a small travel size tube, which is great for your cosplay repair kit. If it's your first time watching my videos, please don't forget to subscribe, like, leave comments, tell your friends, and while you're at it, jump over to my website, eviltedsmith.com, where I have numerous patterns for sale. Buying my patterns, shopping through my Amazon links helps me keep making videos. Again, I want to thank everybody so much for watching, and a big shout out to Dap Products for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you back next time right here on the Evil Ted channel.